As you can probably guess, I'm very tired, so I want to make an easy video to buy myself some time for an off day, which means we're talking about buffs, nerfs, and overall balance in Pokemon UNITE. Now, the nerf section is going to be pretty small, because Nerf Gengar, Nerf Zapdos, Nerf Zeraora, looks like Cinderace and Lucario are fishing for nerfs as well, and we don't even have to spend that much time on it. So, Gengar, the big problem is Hex. It's way too short of a cooldown, and I think another huge problem that people don't really seem to respect and understand is that you get way too much intangibility on the Hex. Like, even if you think you're going to land your CC and you time it and you wait for everything that Gengar does, it could just miss because of the millisecond delay on the servers or something like that, or just because Gengar's hitbox is very deceptive. Like, even as he's coming out of the Hex, he can't be hit by CC, even though he's slightly visible. So if you try to time it too early, too bad. If you try to time it too late, well, he's already hexing you again, and you're dead. Also, the sheer damage threat. There just isn't enough time to play around it or set up before you get gibbed, which is the definition of having no counterplay. A lot of people are saying that another problem is that Sludge Bomb lasts too long. No, I really like it, that when you get your Sludge Bomb upgrade, you effectively have permanent Hex. Yes, that's rewarding the Gengar for skillful play, but as it stands right now, just the Hex itself needs a damage cut. Also, another, like, 0.25 to 0.5 seconds on the lockout before you can cast it again. And even if you make it to where Gengar gets to, like, has to cast an extra Hex to get a KO on average, that's fine. And I think the AoE is a little too big as well. Like, the fact that it's a blink means that you don't have to even see your opponent. They can just walk out of fog or walk into a bush, which is normally some kind of counterplay. Gengar doesn't need any targeting. He just throws it in there and they're dead anyways because it's way too much damage. Everything else about Gengar, perfectly fine. Just that Hex, like, that's it. Hex just bullies out every other option. Now, when talking about the Electric Kitty, I think we need to be a bit more creative with the balancing. The base damage on this Pokemon, like the stats, just need to be brought back down, because then that's going to reduce the power that everything has. I think Volt Absorb just scales way too hard and has way too much synergy with the Discharge, because you take a lot of damage, use Discharge, that shield is just enough to make you unkillable, and then you have just an immense amount of AoE damage. And also, Spark, starting to get a little out of hand. I feel like, yeah, Spark is the best option. I thought there was more, like, reward to playing Volt Switch properly by, like, using it for jukes or setup, or even like increasing your clear speed and extra bits of efficiency. So, like, Volt Switch has a lot of cool things that can be done because there is a skill cap there, but Spark is just too strong. My recommendation on Spark is making it to where you only get 2 dashes instead of 3, but also having a shorter cooldown, which means you can't just outdo anyone else. Like, the problem with Zeraora is that its mobility outdoes all other mobility. Even if you have a dash and you also use eject button, Zeraora is going to get onto you, and then it uses Discharge, and then you're dead. And if you try to, like, return damage onto it, well, you're just powering up Volt Absorb. Zeraora shouldn't be able to go into a fight as carelessly as it does and then just still one-shot people. And also that means, like, the scaling on Plasma Gale can also be brought back down a little bit, because using it as, like, an execute is way too strong with the base values and the Volt Absorb and just the overall damage. So yeah, just do whatever it takes to bring Zeraora down any amount. And as I've mentioned in like a million videos at this point, and also with a lot of the Pokemon Unite community actually agreeing on something, nerf Zapdos. Now, the funny thing is, I can't say most of or all of the Pokemon Unite community hates Zapdos, because it seems like there's too many people that don't understand how important it is, and that's another huge problem. Zapdos is just too important. It makes all of the work you put into scoring for the first 8 minutes of the game completely irrelevant, and also creates a lot of issues between people trying to strategize, because a lot of people that don't have like basic comprehension skills or an inner monologue or something, they just keep scoring. They just keep trying to score at all stages of the game, but because of the launch pad, it pretty much becomes impossible to score after 5 minutes, and those points don't matter anyways because of the double scoring and Zapdos after 2 minutes. So people will just throw it. They'll just run down late, and they'll just keep inting, and they'll just like be like, but I need to score. Scoring is part of the game. The game's about scoring. When Zapdos just like makes all of that irrelevant. So Zapdos takes away kind of the obvious way to play the game, and then obscures it, and then people throw, and then it makes the game almost unplayable, because all you need is one idiot, or all you need are more people that understand the game on the enemy team, and then you lose, and there's nothing you can do about it. That needs some kind of change. I think that when you capture Zapdos, it should just automatically give you 200 points for your team, and then now you still have to like try to dunk, you still have another opportunity for a team fight somewhere. And also by removing the seconds that it takes to push into the opponent's side of the map, then that does open up more counterplay or play styles or options for both sides. Maybe 250 points, that way it's in the middle of an optimal Zapdos, and it also means that a double backdoor doesn't completely invalidate going for something that should be an important objective. Yes, you need a game-closing objective, especially in something like a MOBA, but at this point, Zapdos is just way too strong. Now, as for Dreadnought, I think Dreadnought is in an excellent place. It does have like that clarity issue where people are like, but if I give up top lane, then that means we lose because we gave up the points. No, it doesn't. Rotom, like trading Rotom, even if Rotom breaks the first goal and they all score up top, that is not worth as much as Dreadnought, and the problem is people just don't understand that. So clarity issues behind the power of Dreadnought, but I think it being a major like point in the game where it's like, all right, you got 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 45 seconds, kind of build up, get ready for that first team fight. Action begins now. Here's how you learn how to roam. Here's how you start to understand timings. I think Dreadnaught's in a pretty good spot. I really like it. Also, the comeback mechanic of like stealing second Dreadnought or securing first Dreadnought if both lanes even got like smashed or something. I think it has a lot of value, and then it does kind of build it up. Also, if you reduce Zapdos, then that means, hey, there is more power on scoring, so Rotom becomes a little better by proxy, and then that weakens the effect of Dreadnought, because the big reason why you go for Dreadnought, you get 3 of them, and that becomes pretty much impossible to throw the Zapdos fight. Still possible, but Dreadnought is effectively Zapdos screw-up mitigation. That's all they exist for, and that's effectively all that the game is right now. So that's pretty much it on the big glaring nerfs, but Cinderace. So in my tier list videos, I was saying that Cinderace is a perfectly balanced S tier, or like a really good S tier to have, and I don't think it needs a nerf. And for the most part, I agree, because there's always going to be an S tier. You can't just keep chopping off the top or else things get problematic, but there are issues when like you have almost no counterplay like with Gengar or Zeraora, and things are just way too overtuned. But then you do need to kind of be like, hey, this thing's strong, but we can't make it weak or else that's going to create more imbalance. But the problem with Cinderace is that people are getting better with Cinderace every day, so the skill ceiling keeps going up, which means it's getting a bit out of control. It's been that way since like after a week, you know, as like the first week was building up, Cinderace was getting stronger and stronger, and now it needs a nerf. Maybe an attack speed reduction, maybe a little bit of base damage reduction. It's kind of hard to balance it because it is like the one true AD carry, and it is the best AD carry, so you kind of need to keep it that way. And I think a Greninja buff would make it more competitive, but you can't overbuff Greninja or else it's even a bigger problem than Cinderace. But yeah, like Cinderace, starting to get a little out of control. Maybe just touch it up a little bit. Slight little peck of a nerf right there. Lucario, another Pokemon that as people are discovering what's going on, Lucario is getting out of control. It really comes down to the extreme speed. Like when people understood and like started to discover the extreme speed combo and just started styling on fools in lane and then getting ahead and then styling on fools through the rest of the game, and then they realized that Power Up Punch is the fraudulent move and now it's extreme speed for like low counterplay, insane mobility, incredible combo potential. Lucario does need some kind of nerf as well. Again, I think it's just base stats. Like, you knock down the Steadfast, so it isn't as safe. Like, a big problem is, when Steadfast activates, it's a massive shield, and then Lucario gets all the extreme speed dashes and resets, and it heals through it. So you have to kill Lucario like 2.5 times, while it's one of the highest damaging characters in the game. Even if you're just piling everything on it, there's very little counterplay to that. So I say just knock down a little bit of the base values on just Lucario in general, not necessarily the numbers here. And then you also make it to where Steadfast is just a slightly smaller shield. And at least you'll feel like you'll be able to do something against Lucario while retaining a lot of Lucario's like high skull cap and power potential and stuff like that. And then I'm going to say that's it for the nerfs, and hopefully that doesn't bite me in the butt as like some other characters start getting insane. Again, I think like Snorlax as an A+ tier best defender Pokemon is good, and you can't really nerf it except for like cooldowns maybe. That way it isn't always just bullying you 24/7 without like making Snorlax irrelevant. So yeah, I think like everyone else feeling pretty good, feeling pretty balanced right now. But then we can go and talk about the buffs. So like I said, Greninja could just use a little bit of buffs. Problem is that one of its abilities doesn't even do damage. You don't even have the option to select damage. Now, yeah, okay, cool, you increase the attack for a short time on Smokescreen, but it's not like Smokescreen does a decent amount of damage and kind of like sets up things. The Unite move is also really weird on the Greninja. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it really doesn't. But yeah, just like give whatever stats you take away from Cinderace, give them to Greninja and see how that goes. Talonflame, one of the weakest characters in the game. I think Talonflame, like once Zapdos loses priority, it just gets buffed because then like backdooring and hypermobility and less team fight importance becomes a thing. So I don't think Talonflame needs to actually be touched up on anything because it has a lot of potential. It just has zero opportunity to express that potential because you put Gengar, Cinderace, Zeraora in the jungle instead of Talonflame 100% of the time, or unless you want to lose the game. And even then, like Absol is a better jungler than Talonflame because it can at least get in there. It has more early game impact since it doesn't need to evolve. Talonflame power troughs for most of the game and then starts to pick up when it finally evolves, but by then, again, too late, too many team fights, everyone too far behind, and Talonflame just is not good inside of a team fight environment. And then when it comes to other Pokemon like Absol, reasonably balanced. I think like the crit also just needs a rework in this game because Scopeland's 6% crit doesn't feel fair if you like lose lane and then the game snowballs because of an RNG crit at such a low percentage, not just from Absol, but really any Pokemon. It's like streamlining crit. I don't really know what can be done about it, and also we don't really have any clarity on how crit scales. So once those stats come out, maybe we can get a better idea. But yeah, like, so far everyone's in a pretty good spot. As for Garchomp, a lot of people saying Garchomp feeling kind of weak. However, Garchomp has some of the highest pop-off potential in the game. I think a big problem is that people aren't learning Garchomp because they're spending their money, they're spending like their tokens on all the other Pokemon in the game. Like, oh, why get Garchomp when Lucario and Gengar are just hard carries right now? So I think like the biggest problem is once you nerf the top 4 performing Pokemon, then everyone else gets a chance to shine, and maybe they're going to turn out to have been like busted the entire time. So direct buffs, I don't really think there's many that are needed, except let's talk about the Pokemon I consider the worst. So we have Venusaur, Slowbro, Wigglytuff, Talonflame. Those are the bottom 4 Pokemon. And as for like directly buffing them, well, we already talked about Talonflame. Slowbro. Now, a lot of people say I'm wrong and that Slowbro is pretty strong, especially in coordinated play. Well, with all these other changes that might come through and all that other weirdness, like, okay, don't touch Slowbro. As long as people stop trolling with it in my games, like on my team, and people keep picking on the enemy team, making it a free win, yeah, sure, whatever. Which leaves, like, Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff needs a buff because I don't even know what Wigglytuff needs because it's really hard to know what Wigglytuff does and where its role comes into play, but it doesn't have a lot of damage. Like, even if you land a full double slap and a full upgraded double slap in the end game, you don't get enough reward, even if you do everything perfectly, because the combo is double slap into rollout, reset, like knock them up, hit a wall, knock them up again, cancel it, reset into another double slap. You do all that, you get a perfect combo that takes a good amount of work to get in and set up, and you do like third of their health, maybe half, whereas any other character, they just need to press like 3 buttons and you're dead. So double slap needs like to keep that damage because it does so much damage in the early game and then drops off a cliff, and it's unexplainable. Now also Sing, that's something that you can use, that's what a lot of people are doing. So when you have these damaging options that don't even provide that much support, like sure, Dazzling Gleam has a slow and then tags a little bit of damage, but like all the other supports just do more damage. Even Eldegoss somehow, for some reason, especially Mr. Mime, if they hit you with the stun combo, that's just like more damage than even most like damaging characters, than most attackers in the game. So it doesn't have damage or support on its damaging ability as a support. Sing is alright, like, but that's kind of it. It's like you have to give up, you know, mobility for Sing, and then that takes like the coordination. But even then, like, if Wigglytuff tries to run in and sing around in a team fight, it could just get blown up, which forces a weird Starlight Recital usage. And that's another problem. Like, Wigglytuff has to go in to set up Sing, but a lot of Wigglytuff's allies, the people that they're trying to support, don't want to be in there getting nuked with Wigglytuff. So you don't have like the opportunity to set up the Starlight Recital just right, unless you're using it as like Hyper Engage, where you just kind of like have your team, you Starlight Recital, everyone runs in, you get a sleep while it's wearing off, and then things kind of happen. But then like that's it. You're just an ult bot and then an AoE CC bot that doesn't do as much as like other Pokemon in the game. Like, usually when a Wigglytuff rolls up onto me and sings, it doesn't matter. And then there's also just like a lot of mobility in the game. There's also just like a lot of other like CC and things. Like, Wigglytuff starts running up for his sing, and then Ninetales turns around and just throws like a lot of CC to make it really hard for the team to follow up. So like, Wigglytuff doesn't get follow up on the sing, and Starlight Recital just kind of happens. And then it usually doesn't feel as impactful as like other Unite moves or other Pokemon kits. So again, I don't know, like, needs clarity, needs more supportive potential, but if we're getting like Blissey or something, or another dedicated support, I don't know what's going to happen with Wigglytuff. Just give it like a damage buff, so that way it competes with Mr. Mime, and then like just kind of sets up and could be a wacky Pokemon that then has a little bit of utility in its back pocket. Venusaur. So Venusaur, worst character in the game. It just, like, oh man, you go Sludge Bomb, that lowers their special defense, and you hit them with Solar Beam. Still not a lot of damage, still incomparable damage to a lot of the other cast, and it's just not, doesn't really do that much. And then you got like aggro Venusaur, but the problem is Venusaur has no durability. It's an attacker, it has low endurance. It needs to be more of a bruiser, and it also just needs more damage in general so it can get in there and compete with other crazy Pokemon. Like, alright, you Petal Dance them, and then you're using Giga Drain, and you're getting bulky, and you're doing all this stuff, and it just doesn't matter. Like, Venusaur just doesn't matter. And I think another huge problem is that Verdant Anger just does way too little damage. Even if Venusaur is low and using Verdant Anger, it tickles. It doesn't really matter. Even if somehow you get hit by both procs of the seeds, which it spreads out way too much, and even like corridors or something, it doesn't work correctly, I feel. So it's just like, yeah, whatever, ignore Venusaur, kill everyone else, and then like, cool, you're good to go right there. Even with Overgrown, even with all these other things. The basic attack whip, though, is really strong. Like, Venusaur also wants to be a pseudo auto-attacker, caster, AD carry, mage-ish kind of Pokemon, and it still doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, it's one of those Pokemon, like, in the inverse of in the inverse of Zeraora, where, like, the base stats and some other stats need to be toned down. Just, like, buff the base stats of Venusaur. Make it a bit tankier, because it's definitely not 4.5 offense. Like, where Venusaur's damage as a 4.5 compared to Gengar's damage as a 3.5. Something's wrong here. Even comparing it to other speedsters, like, no, Lucario does way more damage than that. Which dev? How did this get by? How did it get by that Venusaur has a higher offensive profile than the characters that are actually doing disgusting amounts of damage? So, more endurance on the Venusaur, because it seems like they want to keep the stats balanced. Just bring that back in line. Make it the 3.5 offense that it is. Give it like another tick of endurance. Raise all those base stats. Attack, special attack, defense, special defense. Maybe the scaling. That way when you finally evolve, you have like a huge power spike. Maybe skew it for the mid game as well. And then, yeah, then Venusaur might actually be something. Like, after having to deal with the Gengar meta for so long, even if Venusaur becomes, like, A tier or A plus tier damage and gets, like, really commonly picked, as long as it's not giving me, like, Gengar, I'm fine. And, like, the thing, that's another thing. The cooldown Solar Beam is so long that, like, going Sludge Bomb Solar Beam, which is harder to land than Sludge Bomb Hex, is, like, half the damage of a Sludge Bomb Hex, and then Gengar gets, like, 2 more Hexes on top of it, and Venusaur just waiting around having nothing happen on that Solar Beam. So, yeah, I think, like, I like the idea of Venusaur being like long cooldown burst, but there's no burst there. It doesn't do anything. Other than that, I really like the state of balance in this game. I like it when everything is broken. You know, I don't like reverse power creep like what killed League of Legends in Season 4 onwards. I like it when you're able to pop off on almost anything and just be like, whoa, what was that? Both when you get gibbed and when you just nuke someone else. Even on a character you've been playing for a long time, like, how did that happen? I didn't know I was capable of that. I've been playing for 50 hours. You know, when you just like start to really get crazy things. The problem is when counterplay is removed, when there's no counterplay involved to making that happen, or the combos or the damage is just too easy, and that makes the game feel completely unplayable, or just like you're doing wrong by not picking Gengar or Zeraora. And like I said, other Pokemon are just going to be bullied out by the state of the meta because Zapdos is way overtuned. So if we see some of that balance, like, yeah, Pokemon Unite then becomes super enjoyable and is maybe a perfect game. I think the devs are failing right now by not making this patch instant. Like, when Gardevoir dropped, they should have just nerfed Zeraora and Gengar. If they became worthless, cool. You buff them in the next patch, but they needed to be taken care of immediately. And then, like, the more precision buffs. Like, okay, Venusaur might take a little time to finish up and make sure it's in a good balanced state. But I think too many players have had their experience ruined by Zapdos fighting, by Dreadnought prioritization, by just having like clueless teammates, and those clueless teammates get exploited by just a decent, even like a clueless Gengar on the enemy team that's just so overtuned and so broken that doesn't matter, and then that's causing people to just give up on the game, even though it hasn't even been out for long enough to give it a real chance if you're already giving up on it. So devs, they've already done the poll. They're definitely going to be changed to the game. They've already introduced new Pokemon. Balance is coming. Like, the devs care. But because we're in such an impatient, entitled, bratty, toxic society, people don't understand that. They don't want to work for their things. They don't want to give anything time. And if it's not immediately perfect, they just move on for the most part. So we're going to see where it lands. We're going to see how this goes. And I had fun talking about the balance of the game. But overall, I love it. Like, you can just pick something and feel good. And I miss that in really any kind of MOBA or something like that. So hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.